Welcome back to Extraordinary Women TV. I'm your host, Shannon Skinner, and I'm joined by Kelita Haverland, who's a singer-songwriter and a human rights advocate. She's got quite an inspiring story that she's here to share today. Later in the segment, before we take a break, I'll have my regular Good to Know Minute when I ask my guests for their top tip on living a successful life, and you will hear Kelitas. Kelita, I am so happy to have you here on the show.
Thank you. It's nice to be here and nice to meet you.
Yeah. Now, you're a singer-songwriter, performer, 5-time Juno Award nominee, an Entertainer of the Year Award nominee, winner of the Word Guild Canada lyrics for your song Bella, a human rights advocate, and you're based in Toronto.
I am.
Well, this is fantastic that you're here. Now, let's talk about you as a singer-songwriter.
Sure.
You've used your music for healing.
Yes, well, it all starts with our own journey, doesn't it? Most
Right,
artwork is created from our own being, our own truth. And so I started writing songs when I was just 11 years old. It was shortly after my father passed away, and I was grieving the loss. And I'd love to play the piano, and so I was sitting at my piano and feeling very, very sad for myself and wondering why there wasn't someone who could have helped save him. He committed suicide. So it was a very, very hard time. And this was
very confusing.
It was very confusing. My father was an alcoholic, and he suffered from depression, and my mother was in the throes of an affair when we were very quickly uprooted from our farm and moved to the city out west in Alberta, and 6 months later my father took his life. So, you know, I had always loved music. I always gravitated to, you know, to singing along with the radio, and I knew that I always wanted to play the piano. But that day, you know, at the age of 11, just a few weeks after he'd passed away, there was something supernatural that took place, and I really, really knew that I was, at that time, was given a very special gift to express myself. And so from that day forward, my music has been a source of healing. And it began more in performing, you know, whether it was in the choir or in drama or the Kiwanis Music Festival. You know, that was my outlet, and acting as well. But when I started writing, I mean, then I was really tapping into who I was and what I was experiencing and what I was feeling. And so over the years, as I continued to write, I actually went to York University. I actually moved east to go to York and take their theater program. So I did a 4 years specialized honors in theater performance, because I also love to act and be funny, and I created all these different characters. That was also another means of hiding, of wanting to fit in, of wanting to take the attention off all the dysfunction of my family. And so I chose to go and take theater, but my music was always there. And then I started recording. I recorded my first album, it's when they were on the big discs, in 1983. And
Right.
that was country music. And that first album, I only recorded 4 songs. I wasn't a prolific enough songwriter or a good enough songwriter to put a whole album together. And then as I continued to be more confident in sharing my life, and then in sharing my, you know, my music, and I worked on my craft as well for a long time. And now I'm at the point where, you know, most of the music that I perform and that I write is all born out of my own journey. And it's used as a tool to help others on their journey. And so, because I've been through a lot in my life, I have a lot to write from, I have a lot of experience to pull from, and I'm just thankful and blessed that I've done enough healing to have the courage and the boldness to be able to put it out there and be a voice for those who perhaps will never be able to share, you know, their heart or their story.
Do you remember that very moment in your life when you said, "That's it, I really want to be a singer, a songwriter"?
Oh yeah, I was 4.
You're 4.
I was 4. I used to watch the Ed Sullivan Show, Red Skelton, Carol Burnett, the Tommy Hunter Show, Country Hoedown.
You were on the Tommy Hunter Show.
I did the Tommy Hunter Show, yeah, 8 times, I think, when he was on. But no, I always gravitated to the performer. And for a farm girl, growing up, where there were no other members of my family who were involved, my father, he used to call square dances. And that was before I was born, and he was also an auctioneer. So there was obviously a bit of a performer in him. But yeah, I knew from a very young age that I wanted to be on the stage in some way.
And, you know, I would imagine living on a farm, there would have been a sense of isolation. And so probably at that time it would have been a really big dream.
Yeah, it was a
to
huge
be a
dream.
performer. I mean,
Yeah.
Because you'd have to leave the farm then to go on and pursue it.
Yeah. And in my early days, you know, I plugged right into the Kiwanis Music Festival, and I really got a huge boost by, you know, singing in my church. I mean, that really was where I learned to stand up in front of people and sing a solo and be comfortable with that. So there were, you know, through school and church and the different festivals and things that I was involved in, those were great things to be able to have.
Now let's talk about The Heart of a Woman.
Mm-hmm.
Now, how did this CD come about?
Well, Heart of a Woman is really it's really a collection of music that I have dreamed about doing, because when I first started writing, it was just me and the piano. And then as I got involved in the music industry, when I first came out, when I first decided that I wanted to record, you know, the singer-songwriter really was not very popular at the time. It was the early 80s, it was a lot of the haircut bands, you know, going into the whole synthetic age of the 80s music. So I found that the best place for me to fit in, that felt most comfortable, where songs were very much, you know, a huge part of the industry, was country. And so I began to record country music, and I wrote songs. But it was different. You know, I was very good at entertaining. I used to do, even though it was country, I used to do covers of Pat Benatar and Tina Turner and Huey Lewis and the News. I was always sort of on the edge. I kind of did my own thing. But my heart, you know, the singer, the songwriter, the artist who wanted to express themselves, really just wanted to sit down at the piano and emote and sing those heartfelt songs that had been part of and continue to be part of my catharsis. And so Heart of a Woman, and I'm also married to a wonderful arranger, producer. So for the last 20 years since I've been married to Gord, he and I've worked together. We've collaborated writing the music, and he's been the producer. So this CD, I said, honey, I love you, but you know, it's time. I need to do this on my own. I need to step out and trust that what I'm wanting to do and believing to do, that it's going to all come together. So I actually flew to Vancouver, and I didn't produce it all on my own. I worked with a producer, Roy Salmond, out of Vancouver, who is known for working with singer-songwriters. And I went to his studio, and we recorded the whole CD from beginning, from pre-production to the final mix, all within 5 days. And I played the music. I sang and played at the same time. And we didn't stop and start. There was no auto-tuning. It was like I was sitting in my living room and I played the songs from front to finish, which is unheard of these days. Nobody records like that anymore. Everybody records, you know, Beyonce or Madonna or whoever. It's like, you know, they might record a line at a time. And there's Pro Tools, which you can manipulate, you know, the pitch and all sorts of things. So this was me live. So it was very authentic. And then the songs that I chose to do, some of them were songs that were taken from other CDs I'd released that were some of my most popular songs. Some of them were new that I'd written, and then there were some gems, as I call them, that I'd written up to 20 years ago, but the timing just wasn't right for me to release them. So it really was a combination of all those things coming together.
Now, Kelita, we're going to take a break, and before we do, it's my Good to Know Minute, and I know you've got a great tip for the viewers.
It's hard to find just one, but
yes, it is.
Yeah,
it is, definitely.
It is.
Your top one.
My top one, well, the thing that came to me when you asked me that was we need to be honest with ourselves. And when we can be honest with ourselves, then there is great freedom in that. And the truth within ourselves, when we come to that place, is so liberating, and it can be the beginning of true freedom.
Well, thank you, Kelita.
You're welcome.
More with Kelita when we come back from break, so stay tuned.
Place is hard to come back to.
I was only 12 years old.
And there are many rooms in your life that nobody even knows but you. I know it's hard to look into your eyes, behind the windows to your soul, and face the truth that you've been living in, where nobody should have ever been. Can our spirits knit together a tapestry embroidered with shame, that healing love will mend the broken hearted, and saving grace change your name.
Welcome back to Extraordinary Women TV. I'm your host, Shannon Skinner. I'm speaking with Kelita, whose lovely voice we had a chance to hear during the break. Now that song is Bella. Tell me about it.
Bella is a very special song. Bella was inspired by a young girl that I met in Cambodia. And Bella was 12 years old when her mother sold her into sexual slavery. And I met Bella when she was 15, and she had been rescued by a group in Cambodia that I work with, and was then living in the restoration center that I'm connected to and I've been supporting for almost 5 years. So it's a very special song. It's really a song dedicated to her and all the Bellas around the world.
And there's a video. You can visit your YouTube channel to see the video.
Yeah.
Now this is a very important issue for you. The sex slave slaves of children in Cambodia.
Right.
It's really drawn you in, and you've really become an advocate for the rights of these children.
You know, it's not something that you just wake up one morning and decide, oh, this is what I want to do. It's come from a place in my own experience. I'm also a survivor of childhood sexual abuse. And so over the years, I've been drawn to other women, their stories, and to encourage them. And it all started when I watched a program on television, and I knew that I could not just sit back and say, oh, that's too bad. I was really driven. There was a passion in me that rose up, and like that of a mother, that maternal instinct rose up in me, and I just thought, I need to do something. And so within about 9 months of watching that show and making connections, my family and I were in Cambodia, and we were there for about 3 weeks, just getting a sense for the country, the culture, and the problems there. And then towards the end of the trip, I had the opportunity to meet 16 girls, all of them who had just been rescued, and I knew that after I met them and looked into their faces and realized these weren't just girls you see on a TV screen. These were real kids, as young as 9 years old, that I was meeting. And so I knew that I was meant to be a voice for them. So I came back here to Toronto, and over the last several years I've done fundraising concerts, which all started with a Christmas CD, and then a
Heavenly Night.
Yeah, Heavenly Night,
right, okay.
And then a Christmas concert. And I've primarily done that here in the Toronto area and then out in Calgary. And over the last several years, we've raised a lot of money and have sent over the money that's helping these girls restore their lives.
Yeah, there's a lot of celebrities that are now using their celebrity to make a difference in the world, and it's nice to see that, isn't it?
Well, I think when we've been given the opportunity, when we've been given the platform in front of the public, in front of the media, it is wonderful. But I think it's, something that everyone should do, no matter where they are, how much influence they have. It's only by us working together and helping one another to, you know, to educate people as to what's going on. So I feel it's a privilege, it's an honor to be able to help these kids, but I think we all have an obligation living in North America to do what we can do.
You know, and you know, as we were talking earlier, the sex trade with children is more prevalent in Cambodia, maybe perhaps other places around the world, than we actually are aware of here in the Western world.
Yeah.
Why is that?
Why is that? Well, for one reason, you know, there's the whole history of Cambodia, the Khmer Rouge, the killing fields that took place, the genocide that took place in the mid-70s, where people really, they had no value for human life except their own. You know, there were child soldiers who were having to murder their parents or their family members. So you have those children who are now, you know, our age, and these are the people that are raising children. So not only is there the poverty, and that's why they sell their children, but there also is an enormous greed. And so these people will sell their children to buy a new TV, to buy a new cell phone, to pay off a debt. You know, their conscience is so different than ours, and the value that they place on human life, and especially those of little girls. So, you know, it's just a way for them to make money. I mean, prostitution has been around for centuries. And probably if we were to, you know, study, you know, we would realize that children have probably been used for this for a long time. It's just very unfortunate that it's still being done today. And
what do you hope that your work will do as an advocate?
Well, I hope that my work and my voice will encourage other people to find their passion about a need and then run with it and do whatever they can do. And also to be a voice for those who can't speak for themselves, to encourage and inspire those that they are not forgotten, that they are not alone, that there are other people who truly care about them and want them to be freed and healed and whole.
How has this, your work impacted your own family?
Well, it's interesting. You know, I have an 18-year-old son, and he came to Cambodia with us, and he was almost 15 at the time, and that was a huge trip for him. And I know that it impacted him on many levels, and I'm sure will stay with him for the rest of his life. I think he's still, you know, as an 18-year-old who, you know, most teenagers, they're mostly interested in themselves at that point. But I think, I hope that it's, you know, taught him that we do have an obligation to use what we have, to use our gifts, our talents to help other people. My husband has been a huge support, totally supports me and has walked the journey with me. But you know, there's also a sacrifice, and a lot of the advocacy work that I do, you know, I'm not out getting a paycheck for it. I work hard at making this issue known. You know, I do a lot of volunteer work. You know, there are some monetary benefits, but not very many. So it's teaching my son that, you know, there's not always a remuneration for the work that we do in how we serve. So I hope that, you know, as the years go by, you know, what's going in will reach here, and I hope it does.
Kelita, if there's one thing that you learned from these girls when you were in Cambodia, the ones that you are really dedicated to helping and inspiring, but if there's one thing that you've actually learned from them that you took away, what would it be?
I've learned that the human spirit is probably the strongest asset that we as human beings have. And even though a spirit can be broken, with the love of God and the love of other people, showing love, you know, healing, true healing, can really take place.
Now, something that's interesting about you too is there's a superstar out there who is a superstar in perhaps because you had given her a break, or she had a break
Shania Twain.
Right. Tell me
Yeah.
the story, Shania Twain.
Well, I was recording in Nashville. I was working on my second album, so it was in the mid-'80s, about 1986. And Shania, who was Eileen at the time,
Eileen Twain, right.
was in Nashville, and I knew her manager at the time, and it was spring break, and I was recording a song, and her manager said, "How would you feel about Eileen singing on this song? You know, she's got a great voice, and it's very powerful." And I'm like, "Sure, let's try it." So Eileen sang backups for me on a song of mine, which I recorded and released, and then over the years, you know, we used to bump into one another and at different events, but I haven't seen her for a long time. I mean, she's just done amazing. I'm really happy for her in this new stage of life for her, because I think she's being true to herself, and it's so good to see. She's going to be able to help so many people.
But it must be really inspiring for you and feel really good inside to know that you contributed to helping the launch of this superstar who's now helping others.
Yeah, I guess it is. Yeah. It is. It's nice. It's nice to be able to help other people, and that's something that I've learned too. You know, as you get older in the music business, there are so many others that are coming up that are talented and gifted, and to be able to pass on knowledge and wisdom that you've learned, you know.
Now, Kelita, there's one last question that I'd like to ask you.
Sure.
And that has to do with your name.
Yeah.
The meaning, the history of your name. It's an unusual name.
It is an unusual name. It's derived from the Old Testament, so it's a biblical name. And it was a Levite priest, and it was actually a man's name, and it was pronounced Kelita. And my mother named me after a distant cousin who lived in the United States, and there was a little girl named Kelita, and she loved the name and said, if I ever have a girl, because she had 3 boys, and so she said, if I ever have a girl, I want to name her Kelita, and it means little one.
Little one, love it.
Yeah.
Now, your website is, if anyone wants to go and find out more
Sure.
information about you and about your CDs and your advocacy work. That's a tough one.
It is a tough one,
It's a
but
tough word.
you did it fine.
Oh, thanks. So it's Kelita.com.
Yeah.
And you have another one, Heavenly Night.
Heavenlynight.org.
.org. Okay,
Yeah.
heavenlynight.org.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for being here today and sharing your
Thank you.
inspiring story.
Thanks for having me, and for all that you're doing to help raise women up.
Well, thank you. Well, for more information about upcoming shows or to contact me, you can visit my website at extraordinarywomentv.com. Special thanks to my friends and family for your ongoing support, and to Jennifer Wu, who's here in the audience, who is in the background working with me to help make this show happen. So thank you, Jennifer. Well, if you are interested in transforming your life, I hope these stories have inspired you. You've been watching Extraordinary Women TV. I'm Shannon Skinner. See you soon.